My very first raid in Everquest with Chef's Kiss. Prior to the raid start, I thought we were going to Plane of Fear, which we did. We did go to Plane of Fear. But what I didn't know was how many bosses a guild generally does, or how fast a guild will generally clear. So I saw the announcement to go to Plane of Fear, and I pulled up the old wiki. Checked out Kazakh who's a guy with 2 big arms and 2 little itty bitty arms. And there's something called a Draco Lich, a few other guys here. Plane of Fear, however, did not end up being our only target. We ended up going through Plane of Fear at mock speed and then proceeding to go to Lord Nagafen, Veneral Sathir, Severus, Fadadar, which was this little itty bitty fish thing. Crazy. But honestly, I might be missing some, but there was so much stuff going on and it was so chaotic. As my very first raid, absolutely nuts. Craziness. The wonderful people of Chef's Kiss on the server Teek, which is a TLP server, brought me along, and I sent a barrage of annoying and ignorant questions the way of the raid leaders, guild leaders, and the people who happened to be in my group. And I ended up asking questions, innumerable questions about the lore, about what we're doing, who to assist. And honestly, everybody was wonderful. Everybody was absolutely wonderful and answered all my questions. Even on Lord Nagafen, when he explained everything, and I was like, wait, where do I stand? The raids in Plane of Fear, at least, was absolutely chaotic, right? So we started in Plane of Fear. So get this, here I am, new bard, level 50, never done a raid. I look up on the wiki, it says, our Discord event says meet at AOC, which I learned meant Agent of Change, I believe. It's NPC in the game that lets you spawn your own instance of your raid so that you can go and fight a raid target without having to compete with other people. So I looked up the map. This is in the Firet, however you're supposed to say that. And it's on the far west side on the south wall. I run all the way over there. There's a fake wall, so I got to run through this fake wall, through a maze of tunnels, beyond these specters that are running around slashing at people. And then I get around the corner, and my game sort of stutters and lags because there's, 60 plus people chilling in this one spot. And so I'm kind of hanging out, and I'm like, I don't really know what's going on. And I message Danosaurus to get an invite to the raid, and I join the raid. Nothing changes after I join the raid, so I panic. So I Google, hey, how do you look at raid frames? And it turns out the command is Alt-R, which brings up the raid frames. And then I'm even more confused because there's a section where the groups are, and then there's another section for the people who aren't in a group but are in the raid, which is weird to think about, at least coming from other games, right? There's people not in a group yet and people who are in a group. It was confusing, especially for me. Hung out for a while. Groups got shifted around a whole bunch, and I finally landed in this group with CD and Ceranasis and Yamato, and the group shifted so much that I don't even remember all the people that were in my group at one point. I was with Balbo, who I think was a necromancer, Faz, who was a druid, and then Rumpelwang, who was another bard at one point. We had 2 bards in one group. I guess that was a mistake, but we had our duet, if you will, in the Plane of Fear. But it was, I barraged these people with just so many questions, because when the raid started, they said zone in, run to the west wall. I ran to the west wall, and then within seconds, the monks were running all over the zone, pulling literally everything. I mean, there are points where there's like 4 charmed mobs along with 10 other things being killed at the same time. And I don't really know what to do. I don't know what to kill. So I spend most of the time in the beginning just sort of double checking my spells, because I know, based on my prior research to coming here, that my duty as a bard was to bring up magic resist. So I was going through all of the current magic resist songs that I have and double checking which ones do and do not stack. So I got that all sorted out. And then came the question of, who the heck do I assist? I looked at the raid frames. There was a person with a little A next to their name. I want to say it was Garl, who I think is a rogue. Anyhow, I made an assist macro for Garl, and I basically just attacked whatever he attacked. Later on, I asked, what's going on? What do we attack? What's everybody else attacking? And someone had said, just pick a thing on the list that is not dead and kill it. And honestly, that worked great. I don't know if there was a point of an assist or not, but it was just find things to kill. And if I was on a thing that wasn't the assist target, there was actually a bunch of people on it anyway, so it seemed to work fine in the end. I'm sure it could be a little more efficient, but it was so easy that it didn't seem wrong to do it that way. I mean, why stress about picking the correct targets when you could just burn everything down? It's not that big of a deal, right? Eventually, we came across this dragon thing called the Draco Lich. I didn't even listen. I was looking at the Trello page, which had a list of the bosses that we were going to target and their sort of abilities, whether they do death touch, whether they're a belly caster. Had to learn what death touch was and what a belly caster was. But a Draco Lich was not on that list, so I was very confused when suddenly this dragon showed up, this undead dragon, and we had to go stack underneath it and sort of burn this thing down. Turns out he is a belly caster, I guess. Either way. And another thing that was very confusing, amongst all of this sort of craziness that was going on, right, as my first time raid, it's mobs everywhere. We're pulling things that I didn't even know were bosses. Things are dying so fast. Was the loot. There is just being spammed with loot. My loot window was constantly full. And I had to find out, you turn off loot filter. I had to ask, what the heck does that even mean? It's just a little check mark, but when you check it, it turns the loot filter off. That way, anyone in the raid can need something, and it'll go to them so that they actually need it. An actual need before greed system. Whereas on the typical TLP groups, you need everything. There is no need for greed. And the other thing that was a little confusing too with the loot system was just how many upgrades drop. You know what I didn't expect was to zone in here and get like 6 pieces of gear. This stuff called the imbrued plate mail, like a breastplate, gloves, boots, legs, arms, head, etc. All this stuff, bracers. This was all upgrades over what I had with the hodgepodge of gear that I already had. And apparently the other bards had it, because every time I clicked need on it, I either had very good rolls or they had it, because it all went to me, and I had immediate and drastic upgrades, and a piece of my epic dropped off of one of the bosses. So not only did I get all this gear, I also got a piece of my epic that I was not expecting, so I had to add that to my list. I made a list a few days ago about all of the things I need to complete my epic, and one of them, a few of them are from raids, and this was one of them from raids, so it was kind of nice, right? Along with the Draco Lich, I may be confusing the order of when we killed these, being Draco Lich and then Fright, Dread, and Terror, or if it was Fright, Dread, and Terror and then the Draco Lich. Either way, at some point we fought these golem guys, and over Discord, I'm listening in on what's happening. They said, okay, Fright's coming, and I was like, oh, it's a boss. So I turn around and get ready, and this golem comes up, and then it literally dies in 3 seconds. And I sat there, and we got like boss loot off of it, I guess. I guess they're like mini bosses or something. I'm not really sure. But I was like, what the heck? And then they're like, Dread is incoming, and Dread showed up, and he died just as fast, and so does Terror. I was very confused. But eventually we cleared everything in the zone, all of the mini bosses, and we spun all the way around, and we went to fight Kazakh Thule, who's a big old guy with the most adorable little arms you've ever seen in your life. He's got these little itty bitty arms on his chest that they're small. They can't reach anything. Why are they there? They're just there flopping around. You can't use those. He was an interesting fight, like all sort of EverQuest fights at the moment. Fear, magic resist, etc. Belly. I think he was a belly caster. I might be wrong, but I do remember asking, and they said just stack on the boss. he ended up not being very difficult at all. We killed him. I don't really remember what dropped, but not very many people were complaining on Discord, so I'm assuming some good stuff dropped. And my role as a bard in these raids was basically boosting the stats of others. While I've talked extensively in my previous videos about learning that bard really does very little damage, we sort of shine in the buffing other people department. So if I equip my drum, which enhances my songs that I sing, specifically the magic resist song or the fire resist or whatever song, because it's a percussion song, that will boost that particular resistance by that much. So we end up buffing our group. That way they can resist damage or the fear. After Plane of Fear, that's when my fear sort of settled in, because they're like, okay, now we're going to go do Veneral Sathir and Severus and Lord Nagafen and the other little fish guy that his names I don't remember. And I was like, wait. I didn't look any. I was typing in chat. And I was like, wait, I didn't look any of this up. Is there anything I need to know? And they're like, no, just follow us. You'll be fine. Well, just if they say put up a resist song, it's all good. I was like, oh, come on. I'm used to playing in Final Fantasy 14 or World of Warcraft, these modern raids that have these extensive phases and abilities that I have to sort of preemptively learn and watch videos and study in order to know the fight. But they were all excellent, and it just sort of dragged me along through them. Ended up being just fine. Veneral Sathir was a guy in the Dreadlands. He was in Karnor's castle. We cleared the whole place. We pulled a bunch of names just to kill them. Like someone wanted something. I don't really remember. And then we accidentally pulled Veneral Sathir. Not everybody was there yet. I think they were showing someone new where to stand, and it was just a little bit too close. And he pulled, and then we killed him. So that was anticlimactic, because they were on Discord describing how if he turns, he's going to do this. If he turns on you, you make sure you're not attacking so that you don't proc riposte or something about him healing. And then he just sort of fell over dead. And as someone knew, I was like, oh, geez, he wasn't that hard at all, right? And Severus was an interesting fight, because he was just sort of in the Emerald Jungle. He seemed to die much slower than the other ones, and there seemed to be more damage going out than the other ones we fought. I don't know if that makes him, air quotes, more difficult, but I do remember the healer in my group having to heal quite a bit and being feared quite a bit, which meant that the boss was alive for a decent while. And then eventually we got to, I can't remember personally whether or not Fadedar or Lord Nagafen was next, but let's talk about Lord Nagafen, because that is in Nagafen's lair, which I think is called Soul B, and which I don't know why it's called Soul B, but we get to Nagafen's lair, kill a whole bunch of giants, make our way down into these little tunnels here. Apparently there's a dragon down the hall and down these stairs, and they had this sort of elaborate plan where the healers stack on a particular wall because they're able to heal through the wall on the tank. And then the casters stack on another wall, and the enchanters stack on a wall, and their pets are able to attack without proccing riposte or getting damaged. And then the melee stack behind another wall. And I guess this is all to sort of block line of sight and not take damage. I don't really know. I was confused on the whole thing when they set it up. And then mostly because they said melee stand here. And my understanding for me was to try to find a spot where I could stand to buff both the ranged casters, the healers, and the melee that were in my group. So I was confused. Should I stand over here or over there? I'm not going to be able to reach the healers. I don't know. So they told me to kind of go up to the boss. So I kind of just went up to the boss. I followed another bard who went up into the fight the boss, which might have been a mistake because I ended up dying. I don't even know why I died. I think it was just too much damage on the group, and probably because I'm only level 50. Honestly, that probably has something to do with it. But I was one of 2 deaths on the fight. My favorite boss that we did of the night, we ended up going to it was one of the ocean zones, Ocean of Tears or Timorous Deep. I don't know, one of those, one of the islands, and it was next to a giant chessboard. We spent all this time buffing and clearing and talking, and then one of the monks announced on Discord that the boss is on the way and to watch out. So I was, waiting, and then this tiny little salamander comes, literally smaller than my character, comes slithering his way through the sand. And we have 68 people in the raid, I think it was, or was it 70 at that point? And, there's a lot of melee. All these people bunched up, just punching this fish, man. This poor fish on the ground. And they're just curb stomping him and punching him in the head and swinging their sword. All of us are just stacked up on top of this guy, just punching the heck out of this poor little fish. This is... like, are you serious? Is this really a boss? Are you serious right now? He's my favorite. It is a stroke of genius, I think, to take an actual raid boss and make him tiny. A stroke of genius. I love it. My overall opinion of the raids in Everquest. This is difficult for me to sort of talk about and sort of iterate what I am thinking properly. I come from very extensive raiding experience, being in Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft from vanilla all the way to modern. As someone who is, generally speaking, a raid leader in these games, I am the one that studies the boss, I am the one that does the announcements, and I am the one that sets up all of the fights every time. That's what I'm used to doing. I'm used to these very complicated fights. But with EverQuest, when I was looking them up, the fights were not especially complicated. That does not mean they are easy. We have to kind of separate whether, complicated and easy. While the EverQuest fights only had a couple of mechanics, usually being some type of fear, some type of AoE damage, whether or not they're a bellycaster and death touch. Generally speaking, all the fights I remember, that's kind of what we dealt with. And those, while doesn't seem like a lot up front, are actually rather complicated to deal with. When you have 70 players, you have to arrange everybody in the correct orientations of the party, and everything has to sort of work together. If we were to imagine all of the parts of this raid, if one gear happens to slip and the timing chain slips, then it won't run anymore and the whole raid will collapse. And generally speaking, that's how I sort of envisioned these raids going. If something went wrong, it would be difficult to recover from something like that. It would be difficult to recover the raid. However, if we flip the script and we take a raid like Final Fantasy XIV or Modern WoW, where the game where I'm used to, I am used to, having a 3-page list of all of the boss's abilities, all of the boss's phases, and then I have my own rotation to do while executing all those other ones, on top of also telling other people what to do during the raid. However, there's sort of wipe recovery. It's not that big of a deal to die in those games. It's generally speaking not that big of a deal. But in EverQuest, it is a big deal because it takes a long time to buff the raid, run back to the position, get everybody ready, arrange the groups, figure out what went wrong and correct it, and go again. You're talking 15, 20 minutes just to get back and ready. While I know some of the fights in Final Fantasy XIV and WoW are 20, 25 minutes long, and all of those abilities are there, it's not that big of a deal to just wipe, boom, go again. There aren't that many buffs. There aren't that many things to worry about. Whereas in EverQuest, while it is a little bit simpler, I feel that it is still, complicated. You still have to take it seriously. And if you don't, you'll sort of be punished for not taking it seriously. And I think it's nice. It's a nice breath of fresh air to have a very not complicated fight actually be sort of complicated, and you have to do it and execute it correctly. Otherwise, you'll get, punished for it. Again, I had a great time raiding it. Absolutely wonderful time. And I really have to thank Chef's Kiss for dealing with everything that I say and do, because I am just asking the dumbest questions while we're going through these raids. The dumbest questions.